Welcome to the Fixed Ops Mastermind. I am your host, Dave Foy, and today we are talking about asking better questions. So stay tuned. We're going to get into it in just about 30 seconds. All right, welcome back. Thank you for joining us here on the Fixed Ops Mastermind podcast. Be sure to give us a review on iTunes, to share this, subscribe to it, share it with your friends. We'd greatly appreciate it if you find value in it. All right, so today we're talking about asking better questions. And in the automotive business and in service in general, we have to ask a lot of questions, and we're asking questions. If you're the service advisor, you're asking questions of the customer to find out more information on what is going on with their car, and we need to get better about asking those questions also. We also want to know how they're using their vehicle. That's something that should be discussed at the beginning of the ownership, so that you have some idea of what their plans are for the vehicle. If it's a lease car and their plan is that at 36,000 miles they're turning it in, then you're probably not going to end up with a whole lot of maintenance and things that they're going to want to do on that car, because most people are not looking at a lease car as their own. So if it's somebody who has a truck and they're towing a camper, and this is how their family vacations and they're going somewhere every single weekend in the summer, that's somebody who's probably going to do a lot more maintenance, and that simple question can help you find that out and help you better serve that customer. So those are some simple questions. Now, I want to talk more about questions that are leading somewhere, questions that are digging deeper. So most of the training in automotive, and most of the training in general, teaches you what to think. And that's really important. You have to have a foundation to build on, and having a foundation of what to think is extremely important. But what I believe is that you really need to know how to think. And when you know how to think, that changes the questions that you can ask. So, as an example, if you know what to think, and then you're presented with a new situation, it can be, depending on that situation, it can be paralyzing. You can end up taking the choices that you have in front of you and just making a guess, because you only know what to think, and you weren't taught how to think. So when you're taught how to think, you can adapt that thinking into any different situation to work your way through it. And you can work your way through it by asking questions. So most of the automotive training is heavily weighted on what to think. And what that ends up being is, especially as you move up in the ranks, you get confronted with a situation that's new, and you don't know what to do with that situation. And because you weren't taught how to think, you don't know how to question your way through it. And so, if you only know what to think in that situation, then it's going to be much more difficult for you to be able to get through that situation. So, asking good questions can separate you from the rest. So there's also a fear around asking those good questions and knowing how to think, because many times when you're asking those questions, it's going to expose that it's something you don't know. And guilty as charged here in the automotive industry, I have been in those situations, and I have failed to ask those questions because I didn't want to expose that I didn't know the answer. And I was recently on a Facebook Live with JDI coaching. And this was one of the things that we talked about, was not being afraid to ask questions, right? So this is asking questions. We were discussing more specifically asking questions to find out the answer that you don't know, not necessarily to work your way through a situation. But that is something that becomes very difficult. You get put into that manager chair, and you feel that everybody is looking at you as the guy who has all the answers. And you don't need to be that person. Nobody has all the answers. I've been in this business for 30 plus years, and I don't know all the answers. So do not be afraid to ask those questions that will expose that you don't know something. But it's also going to help others to think about something differently, and allow yourself to think about something differently. So I was very lucky in my career to have some good mentors to help me learn some important lessons as I came up through this industry. But I will also say that at times I allowed the mentor to keep me where I was. And that wasn't something that any of them were intentionally doing. But rather than asking all the questions that I needed to ask, there were things that I would defer to them on. Now these mentors were people that I was working for. They were service managers when I was advisors, when I was an advisor, directors when I was a manager. And there were things that I allowed to pass without asking questions about, and with the thought in my head that I don't know that, but I will learn it when I get there. When it's right, I'll learn it. And that is something that I wish I had not done. My education in this business has been amazing. And again, as I said, I'm very lucky to have the mentors that I had. I certainly learned a lot from them, and it has brought me to this point in my career. But I want others to be able to progress faster than I did. I believe, looking back, that I didn't give myself the credit that I deserved, and that's not a self-serving statement. It's a fact. I was ready to lead at a higher level, but I held myself back by not asking questions, by allowing that fear to keep me from asking the questions that needed to be asked, so that I could know that I could lead at that level. So one of the things in asking questions, so you can lead by asking questions. What I mean by that is you can lead others through questions, not by questioning them. That's not what I mean. I mean by asking the questions that get them to think about what they could do, as opposed to what they should do. So as a leader in the service department, I want my team to understand that there are different ways to go about something, and different ways to the same end. And the way we get to that is by allowing them to think, and by asking questions of them to lead them through the thought process, rather than telling them what they should do with a situation. We ask questions to lead them through that situation. So you have an advisor who has an upset customer, and rather than immediately jumping in and taking care of that customer, you lead the advisor to see what they could do with this, and you help them with word tracks of things that that you can say to that customer to de-escalate the situation, to allow them to solve the problem themselves, and thereby seeing what they could do. So, as an example of that, rather than just getting up, going and talking with the customer, and now you have taken away the power of that advisor. That customer has now lost trust in that advisor, and every time that customer comes in, if they're dealing with that advisor again, or for that matter, if they're dealing with any advisor in your store, they're always going to have in the back of their head that if there's an issue, they can get the manager and get it solved, or the director and get it solved. And that's not the way that I prefer to lead a team. Now, that is not to say that I don't ever have to get involved in customer situations. Obviously, I do. So an example of allowing your advisors to see what they could do and not necessarily what they should do. So they come to you, they have a customer that's upset, does not matter what the reason is. So rather than jumping and getting involved, you say to the advisor, here's what I want you to say to that customer. And you give them a situation. And you give them a situation with multiple outcomes and allow them to think that through and to ask you questions, right? So you are now allowing them to ask questions. You are now teaching them how to think and not what to think in a situation. Let them go and face that customer. Let them try and solve that problem. They will learn more of a lesson by doing that than they will by watching you solve the issue for them. It's sort of like the teach a man to fish proverb. Teach a man to fish. Teach your advisors to solve problems. Teach them how to think, not what to think. That is what we need more of. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Certainly, if you want to go deeper on these issues, join the Fixed Ops Mastermind, fixedopsmastermind.com. We have weekly meetings with experts from around the industry, as well as an amazing group of members that is growing every week with diverse backgrounds from advisor up through dealer principal. Join us. There is also those amazing people make up an amazing community in the fixedopsmastermind.com at the community area. That is a private area for members only, but they're making posts. There's information there. All the past sessions, recorded sessions are listed there, so they can go back and rewatch and get the information and get more insight, as well as a digital library with pay plans and information from the sessions themselves, from the speakers themselves, templates, Excel templates that we use. Just a lot of information there behind the scenes that just more benefits that you get from being a member of the Fixed Ops Mastermind. Again, thank you everyone for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Please join us so we can go deeper on these topics. fixedopsmastermind.com. Share this podcast, rate this podcast, subscribe to this podcast. Help us grow this. My mission is to leave this industry a little better than I found it, and every one of you is a part of that. And I look forward to seeing you inside the Fixed Ops Mastermind. Take care.